These are the most interesting historical photographs and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Lunch distribution in the Winsdorf refugee camp, Germany, 1924. The photo shows children and caregivers at the food delivery window, where cabbage soup, potatoes, and cocoa are served, as indicated on the board. Earthquake in San Francisco, April 18, 1906. Magnitude 7.9 on the Richter scale. The fire destroyed most of the city, killing more than 3,000 people. In the foreground, residents watch the disaster from a hill, while behind them, the city is engulfed in flames and smoke. It is a medieval shoe-shaped casket made of wood with carvings and a metal lock. Similar objects were used in Europe in the 15th, 17th centuries to store money or jewelry, symbolizing both wealth and status. The photo shows a street Santa Claus from the middle of the 20th century, posing with children as a souvenir. Such St. Nicholas saints often appeared in shopping districts and fairs, creating a festive atmosphere and delighting children without any advertising or commerce. The year is 1914. Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna is at the bedside of her son, Tsarevich Alexei, who has hemophilia, an incurable disease that could cause even a minor injury to become fatal. Due to the illness of the heir, the Empress became close to Grigory Rasputin, whose influence on the Romanov family soon shocked the whole of Russia. 1930s, New York. Lieutenants Frank Ballo and Samuel Peterson conduct a fire test of a new bulletproof shield invented by Elliot Wisbrod, who is also behind the shield. The experiment was successful, and such shields were soon used by the police for assault operations. July 1958, Leningrad. 5-year-old Vladimir Putin sits on the lap of his mother, Maria Ivanovna, in the garden near the house. The photo from the family archive reflects the modest post-war childhood of the future president of Russia, an American of Chinese descent with the inscription, "I am Chinese, please, not Japanese," sewn to his clothes so that he would not be mistaken for Japanese, who were hated in the USA at that time. 1941. 1953, Somerset, USA. Young Jim Jones, the future founder of the Temple of the People's Sect, sings with children at a Methodist church, where he was still considered a charismatic preacher. At that time, no one knew that 25 years later, his name would be associated with one of the biggest tragedies in the history of new religious movements. Private First Class Rez P. Hester of the 7th Combat Dog Platoon, attached to the 25th Regiment, 4th Marine Division, takes a nap while Butch, his combat dog, stands guard. Iwo Jima, February 1945. The results of a 1940 Fortune magazine poll. If Germany wins a landslide victory over France and Britain, will it pose a threat to the United States? The options are yes, no, I don't know. Here is a rarity from 1886, a pocket watch with a built-in camera, one of the first prototypes of espionage equipment. The lens slides out of the case, and the shooting took place unnoticeably, thanks to a disguised trigger mechanism. These devices were used for covert photography long before the advent of miniature electronics. Around 1915, Nicholas II, with his family and entourage, leads a round dance on the lawn in Tsarskoye Selo. Despite the raging First World War, the emperor maintained the illusion of a serene life. The frame became a symbol of the separation of the royal family from the impending catastrophe. October 1967, Vietnam. An American soldier from the 25th Infantry Division climbs out of the Viet Cong Tunnel, an extensive underground system that was used for covert movement, weapons storage, and ambushes. Such operations were considered one of the most dangerous. Every entrance could be booby-trapped or camouflaged. Steve Irwin, the legendary Australian naturalist, carries his daughter Bindi on his shoulders, holding a young crocodile in his arms. The photo perfectly captures the spirit of his life: wildlife, family values, and genuine love for animals. As an adult, Bindi continued her father's work, becoming a conservationist and a TV presenter. The year is 1992. Barack and Michelle Obama at their wedding in Chicago, without security guards, without political titles, just a couple in love. 16 years later, he will become president of the United States, and she is one of the most influential women of the 21st century. A couple 48 hours after meeting at the Woodstock Festival, and 50 years later, already with 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. Mexico, 1924. 17-year-old Frida Kahlo, in a 3-piece suit with a cane, poses for a family photo, defying tradition. Even before her fame, she was already a symbol of audacity and inner freedom. Spring of 1945. The prisoners of the concentration camp greet the Allied soldiers with joy and relief. For them, it is a long-awaited freedom after years of horror. This frame has become a symbol of the end of one of the darkest chapters in the history of the 20th century. Freddie Mercury and Mary Austin, an unusual but deep love that lasted a lifetime. Despite the fact that they were not together as a couple, he called her his wife and left her almost the entire inheritance. The memorial Shoes on the Danube embankment in Budapest recalls the terrible events of the Second World War. It was created in memory of the Jews who were shot at the water. Simple cast iron shoes speak more than any words. The 1960s. Young Dolly Parton and her husband Carl Dean, soon after their wedding, they avoided publicity, but have been together for more than half a century. Despite their fame and show business, their union remained one of the strongest in the history of American music. The year is 1922. For the first time in history, doctors injected insulin into children in diabetic comas who were already considered doomed. While the latter was being injected, the former was already starting to wake up. The moment when science literally brought an entire ward back to life. Kane Tanaka is the oldest inhabitant of the planet. Was born in 1903 in Japan. During her life, she has survived 2 world wars, 5 emperors, the invention of television, and the COVID-19 pandemic. At the time of the last photo, she is 119 years old. She has become a symbol of longevity and perseverance for a century. France, 1918. A soldier of the 369th U.S. Infantry Regiment, known as the Hell Fighters of Harlem, poses with a puppy he rescued from the battlefield. This regiment became one of the most valiant units of the First World War, despite racial discrimination in its own army. 1918. The Spanish flu epidemic. The family poses in masks for protection. Even the cat has a gauze bandage. The photo reflects the scale of fear and concern for loved ones in one of the deadliest moments of the 20th century. 1971. 17-year-old Juliana Kupka survived after falling from a height of 3 kilometers. The plane, which was struck by lightning, fell apart in the air. After spending 10 days in the Amazon jungle with a broken collarbone and infected wounds, she found a boat and escaped. Of the 93 people on board, only she survived. Paris, 1933. Marlene Dietrich was detained at the train station for wearing trousers. At that time, it was considered a violation of the women's dress code. Her style and actions have become a challenge to society and a symbol of freedom for women around the world. USA, 1922. Women undergo the fashionable mud treatment at that time. The procedures were considered rejuvenating and healing. Mud baths were used in sanatoriums to treat rheumatism, skin diseases, and nervous exhaustion. Brazil, 1913. The photo shows men dressed up as women for a costumed carnival, which is confirmed by the caption, "Mascaradas." Such masquerades were popular in Latin America and were often accompanied by theatricality and satire on secular fashion. England, 1936. After the death of the owner, the children took custody of his dog, gathering every day to feed and pet him, a touching example of childish kindness, which has become a symbol of empathy and true humanity. USSR, 1950. Legendary water polo player Peter Mshvenyaradze is sitting by the pool with his grandson, both wearing bathing caps, as before the match. Mshvenyaradze was the captain of the USSR national team and one of the symbols of Soviet sports of his time. Switzerland, 1977. The red-hot body of the Panzer 68 tank is immersed in oil for thermal quenching at a factory in Thun. This impressive process gave the armored steel strength and impact resistance, making the tank one of the most reliable in European armies. San Francisco, 1849. During the gold rush, dozens of ships were abandoned in the bay as their crews deserted to search for gold. These ships have turned into floating warehouses, hotels, and even prisons, a symbol of the beginning of California's rapid growth. The 19th century. The skinny leather gloves were a symbol of elegance, but it wasn't easy to put them on. To do this, they used a special pinout, a tool that gently extended the fingers of the glove so as not to damage the fabric and nails. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip have been married for 74 years, one of the longest marriages in the history of monarchies. The wedding took place in 1947, and decades later they remained a symbol of stability, loyalty, and duty to the country and each other. The year is 1997. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon call their moms immediately after winning the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for the movie Good Will Hunting. This moment was the beginning of their meteoric rise in Hollywood and a symbol of their dream fulfillment. Fake heads used in the escape from Alcatraz in 1962. The prisoners made them out of soap, paper, and real hair to trick the guards and escape from the most guarded prison in the USA. A wealthy family in Liberia, Monrovia, 1910s. The photo shows a rare combination of traditional and European clothing. Men in hats, a woman in a full dress, and children in suits. David Bowie at a concert in 1983. The photo captured the iconic moment of his Serious Moonlight tour when more than 80,000 people gathered at the show in Canada, one of the largest audiences in his career. In the 1950s, unusual self-defense shoes appeared in Italy. Heels with metal spikes on the toe and heel. They were advertised as a way for women to protect themselves from harassment on the streets of Rome. St. Catherine Drexel is a billionaire and heiress of a banking dynasty who gave up her wealth for the sake of service. She devoted her life to helping African Americans and indigenous peoples, founded dozens of schools, and Xavier University in Louisiana. Kyle MacLachlan and Frank Herbert on the set of Dune, 1984. The author of the novel is happy to carry the performer of the role of Paul Atreides on his back, a rare shot of the warm friendship between the writer and the actor. Ernest Hemingway on safari in Kenya with his fourth wife Mary, 1953. This period inspired him to create stories about wildlife and African hunting. Seiichi Yokoi, a Japanese soldier who hid in the jungles of Guam for 27 years after World War II, cries after returning to Japan in February 1972. His return became a national sensation. Robert Oppenheimer, scientific director of the Manhattan Project, and General Leslie Groves, military supervisor of the project, 1945. This year, the United States successfully tested the first atomic bomb. Qusay Hussein, Saddam Hussein's youngest son, shoots into the air with a glass in his hand during a social reception. Iraq, the 1980s. The scene shows the impunity and luxury with which the dictator's family lived. The Supreme Soviet of the USSR at its last meeting on December 26, 1991. A half-empty hall, silence and tired faces. It was on this day that the Soviet state, which had existed for 69 years, officially ceased to exist. Part of an astronaut's helmet found by a farmer in a field in Texas after the Columbia shuttle disaster on February 1, 2003. In 1975, the Denver Nuggets decided to outsmart their rivals in an unconventional way. They invited a woman in the audience who posed as a mysterious fan and made mysterious gestures during timeouts. It looked like a psychological attack, and, according to rumors, it worked. Thermal mask for the face, 1940. It was used by women to protect their skin from the cold and keep warm during beauty treatments or walks. It was made of thick fabric, fastened under the chin, and sometimes connected to a heat source. Photographer. On the ledge of a skyscraper, New York, 1925. To capture the panorama of the city, he manually adjusts the camera, risking his life without insurance. Opium scales, China, the 19th century. A compact case with a cup, ruler, and threads made it possible to accurately weigh doses of the substance up to tenths of a gram. They were used in dens, pharmacies, and opium dealers. 1958, France. In the resort town of Majeva, women sit right on the street under hooded hairdryers, enjoying drying their hair, cigarettes, and coffee. Beauty salons carried equipment onto the sidewalks, turning routine procedures into a social event. Around 1910, a group of Americans swim down the river on a makeshift raft with the U.S. flag. One is fishing, 3 are playing banjo and guitar. The tarpaulin tent protects from the sun. The year 1905. A postman tests an early car on a rural U.S. road. The car was one of the first mail transports used instead of horses. The picture was taken for demonstration against the background of a mailbox and a winter landscape. The year is 1862, Alexandria, Virginia. The photo captured the building of Price, Birch & Co., one of the largest participants in the slave trade in the United States. The sign on the facade reads, "Dealers in Slaves." In the frame are Union soldiers who captured the city during the Civil War. The photo shows a rare example of a trap gun embedded in a metal clip. Such devices were used in the 19th century to protect property. The pistol was fixed and triggered when a rope was stretched or a door was opened. The silicon impact system was activated automatically, releasing a charge towards the intruder. A young couple on the beach in bathing suits from the 1930s. In that era, women's fashion included closed tops and high-top shorts with a belt, emphasizing the waist. Men's swimsuits were one piece, with side cutouts, which was considered the acceptable norm of modesty at that time. A train loaded with new AMC Gremlin cars is preparing to be shipped by rail to the USA, 1971. Such two-level platforms were used for mass delivery of cars from factories to dealerships. The photo shows a mail coach of the RFD, Rural Free Delivery, service in the USA, circa 1910. This is one of the first examples of delivering letters to remote rural areas directly to mailboxes. The wheels are equipped with chains for driving on snowy roads. Pictured is taxidermist William Temple Hornaday, creating the basis for a stuffed tiger in the workshop of the Smithsonian Institution, 1880s. Behind him is a completed stuffed lioness. Hornaday is considered a pioneer of scientific taxidermy and one of the first defenders of endangered species. The picture shows one of the first recorded road accidents in the Netherlands in 1914. 2 cars were badly damaged, probably due to a head-on collision. The photo shows the first stage of the Miss Slender Legs contest. USA, 1952. The participants were blindfolded so that the jury would evaluate only the shape of their legs without being distracted by their appearance. The photo shows a rare round deck of playing cards of the Lar brand, released in 1929. Unlike the usual rectangular ones, these cards had a round format, which made them unique and more difficult to read in the hand. The photo shows the Soviet hovercraft torpedo boat L-5 launched in 1939. It was one of the first naval ships in the world with a fundamentally new propulsion scheme, a surface boat gliding above the water thanks to an air cushion. It developed an impressive speed of 73 knots, about 135 km/h for its time, and was adopted by the Baltic Fleet of the USSR. The development of the L-5 became an important milestone in the history of shipbuilding and a harbinger of future ekranoplanes. The photo shows a man in a top hat in front of the summer residence of President Ulysses S. Grant. The picture was taken on August 8, 1885, shortly after Grant's death. The majestic house with verandas against the background of a deserted horizon seemed to freeze in the farewell silence of the era. Harvard scientists are preparing to photograph the solar eclipse. The 1869 photo captured a moment of scientific enthusiasm. Telescopes, an observatory tent, and top-hat observers at the dawn of astronomical photography. A huge train loaded with giant logs stretched for almost 27 kilometers, a rare picture from 1885. The location is unknown, but the scene illustrates the scale of logging and rail transportation in the late 19th century. Diana Dors at the Cannes Film Festival, 1958. The British actress shines in a summer dress, embodying the style and glamour of the era. This shot captures one of her most iconic images on the Côte d'Azur. The Round Book, the end of the 16th century. A rare example of Renaissance book art. The pages are cut in a circle and bound in a wooden cover covered with leather. Such publications were used as prayer books or textbooks on astronomy. A girl demonstrates a device for creating dimples on her cheeks. Chicago, 1936. A metal frame with adjustable pistons was supposed to form dimples when worn regularly, one of the most eccentric exhibits of the Congress of Inventors. Trainer Margarita Nazarova bathes tiger cubs, USSR, 1950s. Her gentle approach and respect for animals made her a legend of the Soviet circus. She raised dozens of predators without resorting to cruelty. The incident with the K-178 submarine, 1989. During the exercises, a training torpedo from another Soviet submarine hit the K-178, piercing the hull at an angle. There was no explosion, there were no casualties, but the incident became an alarming signal about failures in the guidance systems and poor control during firing. The last chance was missed. London, March 1939. The photo shows a Jewish family being deported from Britain back to Europe due to incorrect documents. In a matter of months, the Holocaust will begin. This scene became a symbol of the refusal of Western countries to accept thousands of refugees in the run-up to the disaster. The oldest residential building in France is Aveyron, 13th century. Built over 700 years ago, this house illustrates the trick of medieval architects. Taxes were levied only on the ground floor area, so the upper levels were made wider. Housing is an example of how taxation has shaped the appearance of streets for centuries. Hulk Hogan and Muhammad Ali at WrestleMania I, 1985. At the first WrestleMania, the boxing legend became a special referee, and the WWF star became the main character of the show. This meeting marked the merging of sports and show business in a new format that revolutionized the entertainment industry. Miss Universe, 1991, the era of change on the stage of the competition. The USSR still exists, fashion dictates red swimsuits, and the participants embody the glamour and grace of a bygone era. The winner that year was Lupita Jones, the first Mexican woman to become Miss Universe. A ritual cart from Oseberg, Norway, 9th century. This carved chariot was found in a Viking burial mound and was probably used not for everyday trips, but as a status symbol in rituals. The amazing detailing and patterns on the wood are an example of the skill of Scandinavian carvers. The Coleman family dynasty, from mustard to nobility. Left, Russell Coleman and the Duke of Kent, 1931. Russell represented the third generation in the Coleman's mustard dynasty, becoming a symbol of Victorian success. On the right, his grandson, Sir Timothy Coleman, and his wife, 1990s. By that time, the family brand had become global, and the Coleman family name had entered the British elite. The experimental Bell X-22, photographed from above, is one of the most unusual aircraft of the 1960s. 4 rotary fans provided vertical takeoff and landing. Despite successful trials until 1988, the project never went into production. Big laundry on the Isle of Skye, Scotland. Late 19th century. Women washed their clothes by hand in wooden barrels, a common occurrence before the advent of household machines. France, 1917. An athlete soldier demonstrates incredible strength by raising a cannon along with 3 comrades. Such pictures were popular during the war years as a way to boost morale and admire physical endurance. A lunar globe created by Master John Russell in London in 1797, a unique scientific artifact from the late 18th century. It reflects astronomers' ideas about the moon's surface long before the advent of space photography. Sharon Stone on the set, 1990. The image, confidence, and charisma of the actress are all that the era and viewers around the world loved her for. Navajo weaving is not just a craft, but a part of cultural heritage. In the photo, women at work at a traditional machine, the first half of the 20th century. Illegal alcohol trade on the streets of Berlin, 1929. One pours, the second tastes, the third watches, a scene typical of the era of prohibitions and economic turmoil. Marilyn Monroe, New York, 1957. Photo by Sam Shaw. Summer Serenity, a shadow of coquetry and a sip of 20th century classics. The Parsonstown Leviathan is a giant 6-foot telescope built in 1845 by Earl Ross in Ireland. At that time, it was the largest telescope in the world, allowing for the first time to view the spiral structure of galaxies. 5-year-old Anne Frank on the porch of her father's office in Amsterdam, 1934. Years later, she would write a diary that became one of the main evidences of the Holocaust. Military Field Barber, August 1944. Even on the front line, there was a place for care and cleanliness. Gary Anderson and his iconic recycling symbol, 1970. A 23-year-old student created this sign for an Earth Day contest. Years later, he accidentally saw his creation on a trash can in Amsterdam. A captured motorcycle with front-wheel drive, Germany, 1945. The unusual streamlined design and closed wheels are features of experimental technology at the end of the war. American soldiers and nurses pose with festive turkeys before a Thanksgiving dinner. The photo was taken in Los Angeles on November 25, 1943, against the background of a military base. Actor John Belushi as Captain Wild Bill Kelso on the set of the comedy 1941, directed by Steven Spielberg. The year is 1979. A waiter on ice skates tries to hold a tray of drinks while falling on a frozen lake during a competition. Switzerland, 1936. Model Norma Richter poses in a unique black dress with multiple prints of her own face. USA, 1947. Moscow Zoo, 1944. An employee of the zoo cleans the teeth of a hippopotamus with a long brush standing on the edge of the enclosure. Despite the war years, animal care continued. Oral hygiene is especially important for hippos because of their sensitive gums and their tendency to inflammation. Flood in the village of Herkimer, New York, 1910. The spring flood has flooded the streets, turning the roadway into a water surface. Locals travel by boat, and a photographer captures the moment. Similar floods were not uncommon in the northern states of the United States due to the sudden melting of snow and poor storm drainage. Men and women, some on horseback, pose outside a store in Little Eagle, South Dakota. A postcard from 1922. Such pictures were often sent to relatives as a reminder of everyday life in the American West. Little Eagle is located on the territory of the Standing Rock Indian Reservation and was an important point for the local rural and pastoral population. The Morris and Essex Canal in the village of Waterloo, New Jersey, 1900. Built in the early 19th century, this canal served as an important transportation artery, connecting the coal mines of Pennsylvania with the industrial centers of the northeastern United States. The photo shows a lock device that allowed the barges to overcome height differences. A parade of new post office trucks on a snowy street, circa 1955. Photo from the archive of the National Postal Museum of the USA. Such demonstrations of equipment were held to present to the public an updated fleet that improved the speed and reliability of delivery. The only known photograph showing Presidents Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt together was taken in 1915. At that time, Theodore had already left the presidency, and Franklin was just beginning his political career as Assistant Secretary of the Navy. A British Gloucester Gladiator fighter jet flies over a Triumph Gloria car. The picture was taken during the Second World War, when biplanes were already a thing of the past, giving way to more modern machines. Despite its outdated design, the Gladiator was actively used at the beginning of the conflict, especially in North Africa and Scandinavia. Aerial view of the gas attack on the Somme front, France, 1916. This is one of the rare images showing the mass use of chemical weapons, one of the most brutal innovations of the First World War. Gases like chlorine and phosgene were released from the cylinders when the wind was favorable, forming deadly clouds covering the enemy trenches. Rosa Shanina is a Red Army sniper with 59 confirmed targets. She voluntarily went to the front, fought in the 3rd Belarusian. She was awarded the Order of Glory. She died in 1945 while covering for an officer. Tobacco shop in Japan, 1877. On the counter, there are smoking pipes, cases, tobacco boxes, lighters, and accessories, neatly arranged in rows. The owners pose against a wall hung with tubes. German soldier captured by the French resistance, Saint-Michel, September 1944. He is led through the streets past the gathered crowd. A woman screams in rage in the face of a military man. The scene reflects the intensity of emotions in liberated France. A trainer leads an elephant past the Soviet Army Theater in Moscow, 1950s. Such processions were often organized by circuses in the capital, causing delight among passers-by and especially children. The aftermath of the explosion at the J.P. Morgan building on Wall Street, September 16, 1920, a homemade bomb hidden in a wagon killed 40 people and injured about 400. It was the largest terrorist attack in the United States at the time. A Dutch Marine patrols the jungle in Indonesia, 1946. Immediately after the end of World War II, the struggle for Indonesian independence began. The photo shows the original and a colorized version of the scene. American diver Frank Crilly on the deck of the Explorer bathysphere, 1932. These early dives laid the foundation for deep sea exploration, despite the risk. The bathysphere could not move independently and depended on a cable. A couple of Bedouins at a tent, 1898. Bedouins are a nomadic people of the Middle East whose culture and clothing reflect the traditions of desert life. Winona Ryder, Jodie Foster, and Julia Roberts at an event in 1989. Youth, style, and Hollywood icons in one shot. A doctor and assistant in Manchuria, 1912, the period of the terrible outbreak of pneumonic plague. On the right is a medic in a makeshift protective suit, tightly wrapped body, glasses, gloves, and mask. Everything to avoid infection. Patients of a psychiatric hospital in New York, 1922, are involved in a dance therapy session, one of the early methods of non-drug treatment. Doctors believe that dancing helps to relieve internal tension, improves the emotional background, and promotes social adaptation. In the photo, a young woman plays the harp among a dense crowd of people at the foot of the Rock of Cashel in Ireland, circa 1910. This place is an ancient fortress, an important symbol of Irish history, and the harp is the national symbol of Ireland. One of the few famous photographs of Billy the Kid, on the right wearing a hat, taken around 1877. He is depicted playing cards with friends. The scene conveys the spirit of the Wild West. Informal gatherings, a bottle on the table, a card game, a simple setting. The photo shows the Longmen Grottos in the Chinese province of Henan. This grandiose complex has more than 2,300 caves and niches carved into limestone rocks, and contains over 100,000 Buddhist statues created between the 4th and 10th centuries. The complex is included in the UNESCO World Heritage List and is considered one of the masterpieces of Chinese stone carving. In the photo, a British soldier uses the help of an orderly dog during the First World War, 1915. These dogs were trained to find the wounded on the battlefield and bring medicines in a special bag. Their work has saved thousands of lives, especially in hard-to-reach or dangerous areas. A page from the diary of Theodore Roosevelt, February 14, 1884. That day, within a few hours, he lost two of his closest women at once, his mother and his young wife. He put a cross and wrote, "The light has gone out of my life. The light has gone out of my life." It was the most tragic day of his life. A page from the diary of Theodore Roosevelt, February 14, 1884. That day, within a few hours, he lost two of his closest women at once, his mother and his young wife. He put a cross and wrote, "The light has gone out of my life." It was the most tragic day of his life. The photo shows a Japanese-American family who had just been released from an internment camp in the United States after World War II. The picture was taken in Los Angeles around 1945. During the war, more than 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly moved to camps due to suspected disloyalty. Despite the lack of evidence, they had to leave their homes and businesses. The photo shows the famous stage of the radical restructuring of Seattle, known as regrading, cutting hills, the beginning of the Dictiex century. To level the area for building, entire hills were literally covered with dynamite and heavy machinery. The Lower Hill project is particularly famous. The hill was lowered by almost 30 meters. The soil was used to expand the coastline. The photo shows the largest polar bear ever recorded, standing about 3.4 meters tall. The picture was taken in 1961, shortly after its extraction. This giant was officially recognized as a trophy record and became an exhibit in the museum, demonstrating the impressive size and strength of polar predators. The photo shows cameraman Frank Hurley during the British Antarctic expedition of Ernest Shackleton in 1907-1908. Hurley filmed the extreme conditions and everyday life of the team in the icy desert. His camera is mounted on a tripod, and he himself, with a tube in his mouth, rotates the handle. The shooting was done manually then. In the photo, Ronald Reagan, the future President of the United States, testifies before the Committee to Investigate Un-American Activities in 1947. At the time, he was president of the Screen Actors Guild and opposed communist infiltration into Hollywood. This moment became part of a dark page in history, the Red Panic, when many actors, screenwriters, and directors were blacklisted without the right to work. In the photo is Hiro Onoda, the last of the Japanese soldiers who continued their military service decades after the end of World War II. He hid in the jungles of the Philippines from 1945 to 1974, believing that the war was still going on. He surrendered only after a personal order from the former commander, who had specially flown to the island. The photo shows a medical device from the 1950s designed to stimulate blood circulation in the lower extremities. The patient is sitting with his legs placed in airtight chambers where variable pressure was created. Such devices have been used to prevent thrombosis, recover from surgery, and treat vascular disorders. The photo shows a rare moment of humanity. A soldier from East Germany in 1962 throws a ball over the Berlin Wall to a child on the west side. The photo shows the abandoned giant heads of U.S. presidents standing in a muddy field somewhere in Virginia. They were once part of the President's Park theme park, but after its closure in 2010, the sculptures were moved here and left to fend for themselves. A huge neon poster of Star Wars in Tokyo, 1978. The bright advertisement for the first episode with iconic art overshadowed even the local signage. At that time, the film had just begun to conquer Japan and became one of the first Hollywood blockbusters to cause a massive sensation in the country. The photo shows the result of the explosion of the American BLU-82B aerial bomb, better known as Daisy Cutter. These bombs were used in Vietnam and later in Afghanistan and Iraq to instantly clear a site in the jungle for helicopters to land. The weight of the bomb is almost 6.8 tons, and the radius of impact is about 100 meters. The picture shows an Orthodox priest in Kamchatka in 1901. He wears the traditional clothes of the local people, the Kamchadals, decorated with ethnic ornaments, and he has an Orthodox cross on his chest. In the background is dried fish, probably chum salmon or pink salmon, the main food sources in the north. The photo was taken in the village of Gijiga, now part of the Magadan region. The photo shows parts of the Statue of Liberty at the World's Fair in Paris, 1878. Prior to its complete assembly and shipment to the United States, sculptor Frederick Bartholdi displayed his head and arm with a torch as a demonstration of the future monument. These elements helped to collect donations. Visitors could climb inside the torch for a fee. The statue was completed and installed in New York in 1886. In the photo, Swedish pilots refuel a Saab 105 combat training aircraft right at a regular BP gas station. The picture was taken in 1980 and is most likely staged. It illustrates the idea of the Swedish Air Force's readiness to use civilian infrastructure in the event of war. Such training was part of the total defense strategy, which involves the full mobilization of the country's resources in an emergency situation. The photo shows the majestic Taj Mahal in Agra against the background of the polluted Yamuna River. Once sacred, today it suffers from severe pollution. Sewage, garbage, and waste cover its surface, creating a striking contrast spectacle, next to one of the most famous architectural monuments in the world. In these rare images, a tourist watches the eruption of Mount St. Helens from the top of Mount Adams on May 18, 1980. The distance between the mountains is about 60 kilometers. The eruption was one of the most devastating in U.S. history, destroying more than 200 homes, 47 bridges, and vast woodlands. The ash cloud reached a height of more than 20 kilometers, and the shock wave was felt hundreds of kilometers away. In the photo, Janet Armstrong and her sons watched the launch of the Saturn V rocket with the Apollo 11 mission, July 16, 1969. On board is Neil Armstrong, who will soon become the first man to set foot on the moon. A worker paints one of the pillars of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, 1956. The intense orange color, international orange, not only makes the bridge visually recognizable, but also serves as corrosion protection in a marine climate. The photo shows workers during the construction of a sewer tunnel in Chicago, 1912. They stand on wooden platforms with piles of excavated rock and tools below. During this period, Chicago actively developed its underground infrastructure to solve the wastewater problem and prevent epidemics. The engineers used advanced methods of panel sinking for that time, and the workers worked in difficult and dangerous conditions, often manually. The photo shows a rare combination of the past and the present. In the center is an insert of a color historical photograph from the Second World War, where American soldiers on LCA landing ships are preparing to be sent to Normandy as part of Operation Overlord, June 1944. The picture was taken at the port of Weymouth, England, which was one of the key points for sending Allied troops to France. New York, September 11, 2001. The photo shows people in Manhattan watching with bated breath the fall of the towers of the World Trade Center. There is shock, fear, and complete disbelief in their gazes. This is one of the most recognizable street shots of the tragedy, symbolizing how, in a matter of minutes, the familiar world can collapse. The Woolworth Building, one of the oldest high-rise buildings in the city, is visible on the left in the background. The photo shows the process of shooting the opening credits for the movie, Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, 1977. Instead of computer graphics, a physical model with a long plane was used, on which the text was printed. The camera moved slowly over the text at a certain angle, creating the legendary effect of lines stretching into the distance. Legendary fight. Muhammad Ali stands over Sonny Liston during their rematch on May 25, 1965. This fisheye shot has become one of the most famous photographs in the history of boxing. At that moment, Ali literally demanded that Liston get up, shouting, "Get up and fight!" The fight ended with a knockout in the first round and generated controversy that has not subsided to this day. Preparing to shoot a pod racing scene in the movie Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, 1999. The photo shows a scale model of the arena on the planet Tatooine, created by hand with thousands of miniature figures of the audience. These sets were used for combined shooting with practical effects before visual effects completely transitioned into the digital age. Creating such models was painstaking work, which allowed for maximum realism in the frame. In the photo, a group of Welsh coal miners are relaxing in a pub after a hard shift. Their faces and clothes are covered with coal dust, a typical picture of the early 20th century. The picture was taken around 1912, during the heyday of the Welsh coal industry. The miners are holding mugs of Burton Dark Ale, popular in Britain at the time. The photo shows baseball legend Babe Ruth in 1925, posing at the fence with a group of African American fans. Despite the segregation of the time, Root was known for his kindness to all fans, regardless of race. In the photo is Rosa Parks, the legendary civil rights activist. She sits at the front of a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, after the official abolition of racial segregation on public transportation. The picture was taken around 1965 and symbolizes the victory of the struggle for equal rights, just 10 years after Rosa refused to give up her seat to a white passenger, starting a bus boycott in Montgomery and launching the civil rights movement across America. The photo shows a women's detachment of the Red Army during the Russian Civil War, 1919. The women are armed with rifles and pose against the backdrop of the slogan, "Across the harbor to Denikin." Such formations were not uncommon at that time. Many women voluntarily joined the ranks of the Bolsheviks, defending the Soviet government on an equal basis with men. The photo shows a father and son serving in the same German regiment during the First World War, reading a letter from his wife and mother. Germany, 1915. Such family scenes were rare and especially touching. The joint service of father and son at the front highlights how total the mobilization was and how the war affected entire families. The photo shows part of a group of 1,000 wedding brides who arrived in New York on September 27, 1907, aboard the ship Baltic. These women, immigrants from the Baltic states and Eastern Europe, came to America in search of husbands. Inspired by rumors of a shortage of women in the New World, their arrival caused a stir. Crowds of men met them at the pier, hoping to find a life partner. The photo shows actress Brigitte Helm in between filming the iconic German film Metropolis, 1927. She played the role of Maria's android and wore a hard metal suit in which it was almost impossible to move. The assistants help her drink and cool down between takes. One holds a glass, the other directs a hairdryer. Anthony Hopkins is pictured trying on various masks for his character Hannibal Lecter in the film The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. These tests were conducted on December 18, 1989, in preparation for filming. The mask has become an iconic part of Lecter's image, emphasizing his danger and predatory nature. The photo shows Habitat 67, a revolutionary residential complex built for Expo 67 in Montreal, Canada. Architect Moshe Safdie created it as an experiment in modular housing. 354 concrete blocks are assembled into a unique structure that combines the density of urban housing with the privacy of a suburban home. This iconic project is still used as a residential complex and remains a symbol of the architectural audacity of the 60s. In the photo is Tom Crean, an Irish polar explorer and hero of Antarctic expeditions at the beginning of the 20th century. He holds husky puppies in his arms, which were probably raised for sledding. Tom Crean participated in 3 historical trips. He was led by Robert Scott and Ernest Shackleton and was known for his endurance and fearlessness. The photo shows Emperor Menelik II of Ethiopia in solemn robes, 1896. He is considered one of the greatest African rulers, having successfully modernized Ethiopia and defended its independence at the Battle of Adwa, where his army inflicted a crushing defeat on the Italian invaders. His outfit, decorated with embroidery and symbols, as well as the lion at the throne, emphasize royal power and status as the Lion of Judah, a title associated with the Ethiopian monarchy. The picture shows a young Yves Saint Laurent at the funeral of his mentor, Christian Dior, 1957. At that moment, he was only 21, and it was he who, according to Dior's will, took over the post of creative director of the legendary fashion house. The photo shows the unique forest of totem poles of the Haida people in Skidgate, British Columbia, Canada. The picture was taken in 1878 and demonstrates the rich visual culture of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest. Each pillar is a hand-carved story about ancestors, clans, myths, and events. These wooden monuments stood near houses and served as family coats of arms, as tombstones, and sometimes as landmarks of memory of important events. The photo shows a rare moment of silence on the New York subway in 1953. Due to the large-scale newspaper strike, the usual ritual of reading the morning news was disrupted, and passengers were left with their own thoughts. The photo shows steam physiotherapy booths of the early 20th century, around 1920. These devices were used in medical institutions to heat the body with steam, leaving the head outside. The procedures were supposed to improve blood circulation and relieve muscle tension. The photo shows newlyweds Maria Sklodowska-Curie and Pierre Curie, future Nobel laureates, in France in 1895. The picture captured them on a bike ride shortly after the wedding. Instead of a lavish celebration, the couple opted for a simple honeymoon on bicycles through the picturesque French countryside, a reflection of their modesty and dedication to science. The bathyscaphe Trieste, launched in 1953 in the Italian city of Castellammare di Stabia, was a real engineering breakthrough. Created by Swiss scientist Auguste Piccard, the device was specially designed for deep-sea diving. In 1960, the Trieste made history by reaching the bottom of the Mariana Trench at a depth of 10,916 meters, a record not surpassed in decades. If you liked my content even a little bit, subscribe, like, and write your opinion in the comments.